Okay, I'm back. Now I'm about to reflow the motherboard. Pretty much what you need is a good quality heat gun. This is a Ryobi. I bought it from Home Depot. It was $59.99. And it goes from 200 degrees Fahrenheit to 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. And ideally, when you do something like this, you want to do it at around 700 to 750 degrees. So usually a hair dryer will not do that because they just don't get hot enough. There's a technique to it, so you don't want to warp your board. You want to keep your board as flat as possible, which I'm at home, so I'm not in my lab at work. So I've done the best job that I can supporting my board as flat as possible, but you'll see what I'm talking about. You want to start out around the edges of the board, and then you want to work your way inwards, and keep working your way inwards until you finally get to the components that you really want to reflow. And what I mean by reflow is there's solder connecting little tiny pins to the board, and you know, by reflowing the board, if a solder pin came undone, it's going to reconnect it to its pad, its joint. Okay? But the main reason why you just don't want to start out focusing on the GPU and the CPU is because it can warp the board very easily. And you don't want that to happen. So you got to heat up the whole board all the way around, okay? All the way around, and then you start focusing the heat at around 750 degrees Fahrenheit on the GPU and the CPU. And I did put my heating compound on there first, which maybe I shouldn't have done. That might have been a mistake, but I went ahead and applied a generous amount to the fan. So that's not going to hurt it. Okay? Sit back and watch. Turn on the heat gun, let it warm up. You could use an attachment on the heat gun to focus the heat more directly, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to do it without the attachment. And you want to keep the heat gun about 6 to 8 inches away from the board. Maybe 4 inches. I don't know. The main point is you just want to take your time and go slow. The board will get hot. And there's other components on the bottom side of this board. So that's something else you got to be careful about. If you get it too hot, those other components are just going to fall off. And, you know, there's nothing you can do about that. But like I said, you want to try to keep this around 750 degrees or so. And just take it slow and steady and be patient. Get the whole board hot, which mine's getting pretty hot by touch. It needs to probably be a little bit hotter though. See, now I'm going in a diagonal direction around my two chips that I'm concerned about with the thermal sensors inside of them, which I believe causes the yellow light of death. I talked to a Sony representative on the phone today, and you know, they said all their information is proprietary, which means that they can't give it out to the general public, which is understandable. But I've been working electronics for a while, and these kind of things happen all the time. You want to keep your board hot even while you're reflowing your GPU and your CPU. Small circular patterns, they help. Like I said, this does one of two things. If there's a loose solder joint, this will reattach the loose solder joint. And there's thermal sensors inside of these components, and they need to be reset one way or another. And the best way to reset them is to make them overload, which is what I'm trying to do. And like I said, this is exactly what I did last time my PS3 got the yellow light of death 4 months ago. Besides putting new thermal compound on there. But this is the exact same thing I did, and it worked again flawlessly up until this morning when I tried to turn it on and it didn't want to work for me. So now I'm going to focus heat directly onto the CPU for about a minute and a half. Because I know the board's hot. Oh yeah, that's hot. That's probably about 200 degrees right now, you guys. That board alone. And like I said, you just want to heat up the board and all the other components to prevent the board from warping. You don't want any warpage. Warpage is bad. If you have a warped board, you're going to break your traces and it's just not going to operate. Now I'm focusing heat on the graphics processing unit. And as you can see, I brought the heat gun closer to the components where I really want to heat up. And you do the small circular strokes. You know, it's a very easy technique. Very easy. You just got to be careful. And I went back over to the other component. And eventually I am going to go back over to the other component. And then I'm going to go over the board again to make sure the board stays hot. Right now I've got my gun set at about 800 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's fine. And that's exactly why a hairdryer won't work for this process. Hairdryers just don't put out enough heat. So, you know, if this ever happens to you and you happen to watch this video, I know for a fact Walmart sells a heat gun for about $22. And it only has two settings, 750 degrees and 1100 degrees. And you can find the heat guns in the paint section. They're for removing paint. But any of my old avionics buddies who might watch this know what a heat gun is. You guys are all familiar with heat guns. Anybody who does paint is familiar with heat guns. And I'm about to call it quits on this here in a second, guys, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully this will do the trick. If not, I might just have a bad power supply or something else, and I might just have to fork out the money to go get a new PS3. Because if you decide to take your PS3 apart, Sony will not honor their manufacturing repairment agreement if you remove the warranty sticker, which I did 4 months ago. Because that's just how I am. I like to try to fix my own shit. I have a feeling it's going to work though. That's all I'm trying to say. So now I'm going to turn this off. It's a little bit more intense heat directly on the component. There we go. And I'm going to let it cool down for about 15-20 minutes before I go back to it, you guys. And after I let it cool down, I'm going to put the pieces back together and see what happens. And part 2 of the video. As you see, I've started to encase the motherboard in its hard shell. This is the top part.